each of us, that is a different area and different traditional owners. And I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So I'd like to actually kick off our session. Has anybody had any mindful moments over the past week or so, couple of weeks, that they could share? It's a no from Amanda. There's a bit of a shaking of head there with all the busyness and, craziness that's going on.
I'll tell you what I was watching this morning, which made me smile, which I'll count as mindfulness.
Totally.
Oh, beautiful hummingbird in my garden, trying to get the sap out of the kangaroo paw in my garden. And as it was landing, the whole thing was bending over and it was holding on and getting some nectar. It was so beautiful.
Oh.
And that's a nice little mindful moment. I could have watched it forever, but she flew away.
That's beautiful. I think nature is a very easy way to tap into being present and perhaps practicing some gratitude and practicing awe as well. So the concept of awe is probably garnering a whole lot of strength in the scientific community in terms of the effects it has on the body and our well-being and our hormones and all of the things. So when we're in nature and we're appreciating something that's bigger than ourselves, there's a lot of happy hormones running around for us as well, which is pretty cool. Thank you for sharing, Amanda. Does anybody have any other mindful moments they want to share? Kelly? Yep.
It's funny, Amanda, I actually have the same birds in my garden, the eastern spinebill. It's the only one that has that hummingbird action. And I've never seen them out the front in my kangaroo paw. They're in the garden all the time, but never in that. And they were this morning for the first time. So it's funny, same day. Yeah. And they are very much a like zone into nothing else kind of bird. They just take all of your energy and mindfulness, I suppose.
Beautiful. Fantastic. Yeah, we had some magpies warbling at lunch today, and that definitely brought me back into the moment, until I then thought of Collingwood Football Club, and I'm like, moment ruined. Okay, so today I thought it would be really cool to start off with some breathing exercises. So something a little bit more tangible, a little bit more repeatable than mindfulness. And we'll get into some mindfulness exercises in the second half of the session. So what's really cool about breathing is that, on average, we breathe about every 3.3 seconds. We breathe about 20 to 30,000 times a day. So that's 20 to 30,000 opportunities that we have to enhance our health, our happiness, and our well-being. And we take on average about 670 million breaths in our lifetime. And you guys, some of you may have heard me say this before, but there's as many ways to breathe as there are types of food, and they all affect our bodies in different ways. So when we look at free divers, for example, they can expand their lung capacity by up to 30% just by practicing different breathing techniques, which I think is pretty cool. And then just one other random fact on breathing is that we have 25 sextillion air molecules going through our nasal passage 18 times a minute. So essentially that's like 250 with 20 zeros after it. So it's a bloody lot of air molecules essentially. And over time, if we look at our ancestry, thousands and thousands of years ago, our noses and our nasal passages were a lot more prominent on our bodies. But then since the industrial age and since we started eating mushy food and a lot more sugar, essentially our noses have shrunk. And that means that we're not getting as much oxygen into our bodies. And we have so many different breathing problems like sleep apnea, a lot of asthma, all the things that go hand in hand with it. So breathing exercises, I think, are critical to living life. And today we're just going to practice what's known as the box breath technique. So this one is it's really nice and simple and repeatable and practiced by, your American snipers when they're in the heat of battle per se, but also by emergency service personnel all over the world. And the box breath, it's literally just starting to regulate the breath, and we're breathing in for 4, we're holding for 4, then we're breathing out for 4, and then we're holding for 4. So it's just like a bit of a box. But so people with high stress jobs, so your soldiers, police officers, etc., we use it to switch that flick the switch from that fight and flight into our digest rest, but more importantly that repair aspect of our parasympathetic nervous system. So we only need to practice it for a few minutes before we can start seeing all of the benefits, like reducing physical stress symptoms. So we're reducing our heart rates, we're reducing our cortisol levels, we're increasing our feel-good emotions to do with well-being, we're increasing mental clarity, and improving our buffer to stress. So I think that's all pretty cool stuff, and enough reasons for us to practice this type of breath. So if I could get us or ask us all now to, when we're breathing, it is important that we need to make full use of our lungs and our diaphragm and our bellies. Preferably, I encourage you all, if you can, to do this breathing exercise through your nose. Appreciate that some people might have a cold or whatever it might be, and may need to breathe through their mouth. But if you can, we'll be breathing through our nose for this exercise. So it's a simple one we can do anywhere, anytime, cafes, desk, on the job, etc., on our couch. So best if we start by pushing our feet firmly into the floor, or if we're seated on the ground, seated cross-legged, just making sure that our tailbone is quite grounded. You might want to pull the sides of the thighs out, the butt cheeks out a little bit, so that we're really nice and comfy on the ground there, nice and stable. And then perhaps just resting the hands gently in the lap in whatever position feels comfortable for you. And if you can, I would encourage you to gently close down your eyes. And I do apologize, I should have said this first. You're more than welcome to turn off your cameras during the exercise itself. If that makes you feel more comfortable, you're also more than welcome to leave them on. It is your personal preference and whatever you choose to do. I'll be leaving mine on because I probably get a little bit animated. So sitting now, hands in our laps, closing down the eyes if you can, if this is accessible for you today. If you choose not to, that's perfectly fine. Maybe just pick a spot about a meter or so ahead of you and gently lowering your gaze. And firstly, let's just become aware of the fact that we're breathing right now. Perhaps feeling that breath for the first time today. And noticing if naturally we're breathing through our nasal passages. Is that breath rate, is it shallow? Is it deep? See if you can notice any changes. Is it perhaps slowing down now that you're concentrating on it? Is that rhythm changing? And perhaps notice the parts of the body that are moving at the moment for you. Can you feel that chest moving? Perhaps your belly as you inhale and exhale. And just savoring this moment to pause. A moment to pause before we head into the rest of the week, before we head into the silly season. Now just making sure as we move into our box breath that our spines are nice and straight. So it can be helpful to imagine that there's a piece of string slowly pulling your spine up towards the ceiling or the sky. And just making sure that our head is rested comfortably upon our shoulders so that we're tall and erect, but we're not stiff. So we're almost sitting here mountain-like with dignity and grace. And so I will count us through a couple of rounds of the box breath. So that will be breathing in for 4, holding for 4, out for 4, and holding for 4. And so we'll do a couple of rounds together. And then you might like to either slow down the pace, you might like to increase the pace, whatever feels comfortable for you today in this moment, in this practice session. So let's begin all together now. We'll just all take one breath in, an inhale, and exhale. Now breathing in for 2, 3, 4, holding 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, in 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, in 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, in 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4. Now just continuing at your own rate. So picking a pace that's suitable for you today. And just remembering as you're doing your own counting, this isn't a competition. We can put our egos aside. Yes, you might like to experiment with breathing in for 5, holding for 5, and out for 5 and holding for 5. But just listen to your body today. Listen to where it's at. And as we're doing this, not looking to clamp our mouth. So remembering to relax that jaw, relax the area around the eyes, relax the shoulders. So as we're inhaling, the body is filling with energy. And as you exhale, the body is relaxing, restoring, repairing. And perhaps just taking a few more rounds of breath here at whatever pace you're currently choosing to do. And perhaps just taking one more final round of box breath. And whenever you've finished your final round, just letting the breath return to its own natural rhythm. And now perhaps just gently placing a hand or two over your belly to feel that breath as it enters and leaves your body. And it can be helpful as we're breathing deep into our belly, nice and slowly, to imagine that there's a balloon expanding as we breathe in and a balloon deflating as we breathe out. And I appreciate that sometimes this can be a bit difficult or counterintuitive for females, given we've probably been sucking our bellies in for our lifetimes. But let's tap into that diaphragm and use that muscle, feeling that belly expand under our hands, feeling it deflate as we breathe out. Knowing that as we do this, we're literally changing our response to stress. Potentially even scientists suggest we're changing our genetic expression. So there's been studies that suggest relaxation responses activate and boost specific genes that are associated with energy and insulin, and reduce the inflammation or the activation of genes linked to our inflammation, So therefore, we're having not only short-term, but also long-term effects. Simply by breathing deep into our bellies or practicing a technique like box breath. Now perhaps just letting the hands fall into the lap again into a comfortable position. And feeling yourself sitting on the chair or the ground. Bringing a little bit of movement back into the body. So perhaps wiggling the fingers, the toes, giving the shoulders a little bit of a roll, having a bit of a stretch, whatever feels comfortable for you. And then slowly opening your eyes and bringing yourself back into the space in which you're practicing today. And as we're coming back into this space, perhaps taking a moment to notice if anything's changed for you. Has there been any changes in the body, in the mind? Just from spending a few short minutes focusing on the breath, regulating the breath in a specific way. Welcome back. So feel free to leave your camera off, turn it on. Does anybody have any insights that they would like to share with the group from practicing the box breath?
Hannah, I found it, my heart raced.
Oh, did it cut out for everyone else? Oh, no, Amanda's back. Oh, yeah.
My connection, sorry.
That's all good.
I was just saying that my a bit. because of the holding of the breath. So I practice a lot of yoga and meditation, and I do a constant, really long breathing, and I don't hold my breath at either end. Doing that actually, I found quite hard work.
Did you find it hard and stressful, or just different because you haven't practiced it before, or
I found it, my heart felt like it was racing. It wasn't difficult, but I wasn't like feeling more relaxed. I was feeling a bit more energetic, I guess. And then when I finished, I actually felt really tired. So when we finished at the end, and we moved, I just felt like having a big yawn, and I felt quite tired. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. It's when we are having a constant, so we had equal ratios for our box breath. So some people can find it to be calming, but then others can find it to be energizing. So a little bit of an uplift, but then others can also find it equalizing as well. So we're all very different in terms of that response. And sometimes it can be, it's good to play around with different techniques and what may be helpful. Sometimes we did slightly shift into a belly breath at the end there, which is a lot more calming than a box breath. And remember, I think it was in session 2, we did an exercise around sighing, which is one of the natural urges. So yawning and sighing, which have a pretty bad rep in terms of culturally, like your mum or your dad, if you started to yawn at the dinner table while they were waffling on about their work that day, you would just stifle a bit of a yawn. But it's actually, yawning and sighing are fantastic ways to both energize or de-energize and calm, to get a little bit of blood to the brain, to really open up that jaw muscle, etc. So yawning is great, and I'll take that. That's fantastic. Does anybody else have any reflections that they wanted to share? Helpful or unhelpful? Yep, go Kelly.
I similar to you, Amanda, I struggle with the holding of the breath once I've breathed out. I don't know, like a panic response starts in my brain, and I feel this need to breathe in. So my smart watch has like a box breath built into it. To when I get stressed, it kind of reminds me to do a breath exercise. But I now do like an 8 count breath out. So I just do a longer, slower breath out rather than stopping like with no breath. I suppose I've got the same amount of breath, but my brain doesn't do that panic thing of
It definitely takes a little while to practice. So what's happening when we're holding our breath is that carbon dioxide is building up in our bodies. And so when we're not used to doing that, we can have this an air hunger response as well, which can feel quite stressful on the body. But the role that carbon dioxide plays, I mean, we used to think it was just a bit of a waste product, but in terms of the ratio of oxygen and carbon dioxide in our bodies, and having sometimes that air hunger can start to kickstart a whole lot of different responses in the body. I mean, the crazy ass intense one is your Wim Hof stuff, where that's kind of next level, and a little bit nuts, but also, highly, highly effective for example, helping to teach our bodies a little bit in combination with the cold theory that he has, etc. So we're looking to tap into our brown fat instead of our white fat, and using that as a heat source for to keep ourselves warm, and all of these other crazy things. So it can feel, you can get that air hunger or that little bit of stress and anxiety, but it can be helpful to restart, because we're doing it consciously instead of unconsciously, which is the really big key here when we do practice breathing techniques. something that is usually unconscious, we're bringing into the conscious, tapping into that autonomic nervous system, which we usually just go about and not think about twice. Thanks for sharing, Kelly. Anyone else before we get on to the next one? Yep.
Hi, I was just going to say, I only recently, like the end of last week, learned about this box breath, and you're the third person to mention it to me, because I've been having some anxiety attacks.
Yeah.
And I haven't actually really been able to do it effectively. This is the first time that I feel like I actually kind of got something out of it, which is good, and was able to kind of follow through, because I had the similar experience where when I hold my breath, I get a little bit anxious as well.
Thank
but
you.
I was able to, which is great.
Thanks, Ames. Another really good one, if we do find ourselves having to be getting quite anxious, or to be having a panic attack, obviously working with our doctors and health professionals in the first instance, but a really practical breathing exercise is what's known as breathing through a straw. You don't actually need a straw, literally. But if you just imagine you've got a straw and you're breathing through it, what we're looking to do is instead of breathing up from our chests, and when we're breathing from our chests, we're tapping into that sympathetic fight and flight response. We're slowing down and we're regulating that breath, hopefully maybe activating the diaphragm a little bit more. And it's something extremely practical to do when we are having those really intense moments, which we can all have from time to time, depending on whatever might be happening. So it's just breathing in through that straw and out through that straw, through those pursed lips. So hopefully that one can be one to tuck into the back pocket. Beautiful. Okay, I think let's move on to a little bit of mindfulness. And I thought it could be helpful to do a mindfulness practice that focuses upon calming an anxious mind. And so this one's from Professor Mark Coleman, and he's a bit of a legend in this space. And I do recommend listening to some of his audios. I personally start to get a few crushes on different mindfulness teachers in terms of the voice that they have when they're talking. And I can definitely recommend Mark as one of them. I do also enjoy a bit of John Kabat-Zinn. He's got a beautiful voice to listen to, and his expressions are just absolutely gold. So,
Hey,
welcome back, Amanda. Yep.
Just before you go, I'm going to say you have a great voice as well. I've said that to you before, but when you are talking us through these sessions, you've got a really lovely voice to hear as well. So, so you too.
Thank you very much. That is greatly appreciated. Thank you. So on that note, I will continue with my dulcet tones. And for this next exercise, again, you're more than welcome to turn your cameras off for the exercise itself. I would love to see your faces at the end of it. But you can do this one seated or lying down. It's completely your choice. So if we are looking to come to a seated position, once again, let's press those feet firmly into the floor. And it can be helpful if we're sitting on a chair to come a little bit forward from the back so that we're not cheating and lying on the back of it. Imagining that piece of string slowly pulling our spine up towards the ceiling. If we're seated on the floor, you might like to sit cross-legged, but just finding a position that's going to be comfortable and stable for you for the next 10 minutes or so. If you are lying down, perhaps you might like to place a little pillow under your head, a blanket under your knees for comfort. Depending where you are in the world at the moment, you might need a blanket just to keep warm and comfortable. And I would encourage you to let your feet flop out to the sides. And let your arms rest beside your body with your palms facing up towards the ceiling, up towards the sky. And so hopefully by now you have found a posture that is relaxed and comfortable. And yet we still have an alertness and a sense of ease as we're sitting or lying. So we're looking to cultivate a sense of softness during this meditation practice, making sure to also feel grounded. So whether it be if we're seated through the lower half of our body, which is in contact with the chair or the floor, or perhaps feeling our sit bones grounded into the earth. If we're lying down, perhaps it might be feeling that support on our backs, our legs, our head. And just knowing that having this awareness, this attention on feeling grounded with the earth itself, can in itself be a way to calm both the mind and the body. And if you haven't already done so, it can be helpful to close down the eyes or perhaps gently lowering the gaze. You do you, whatever's accessible for you today. Now just turning the gaze of attention inwards. So just finding places of the body that do feel comfortable, relaxed. And as we turn our attention to pleasant experiences, they can become engaging, and our alluring mind can sometimes get us hooked and fascinated with different thoughts, fantasies, perhaps even worries or plans. So that's also an important part of this meditation, is to make an intention to commit, to release the fascination with our habit of thinking, planning or ruminating. And we're looking to commit to orientating our attention to be in the physical, the sensory, and the present. And so perhaps bringing our awareness to our body posture and experience the whole of our body sitting or lying with its whole field of sensations. And so each time we notice the mind thinking or worrying or planning, getting excited about dinner, just acknowledging that thought. You could perhaps label it or name it, and then just gently, there's no need to rush, gently guiding your attention back to your physical posture and experience either sitting or lying, that connection you have to the ground, to the earth. And time again, you'll get hooked by different thoughts, taking you away from that experience of having that groundedness with the earth. And this is perfectly normal. The mind is, after all, a thought-making machine. It's what it does. It's what it will continue to do. It's not that you're failing meditation each time you get lost in thought. Rather, you're just noticing the very nature of the mind, and that the mind does wave. Sometimes the waves might be little. Sometimes they might be pretty large dumping waves. So whatever size these waves are, recognizing that they do come and go. And then just bringing our attention, reorientating ourselves through that groundedness, those physical sensations we have with the earth. And it can also be helpful to expand that awareness, not only to the earth, but also to the breath. Because the breath can be a wonderful resource and anchor, a grounding to the present moment. It can help us to come out of those thoughts, the worries, and just attuning to this simple natural rhythm, a physical rhythm of an inhale and an exhale, expanding and contracting, energizing and restoring. Now maybe just letting yourself become curious about the breath, almost as if you're a little kid again and you've never really explored it. So we all have an inner child, and just see if we can notice all of those sensations. So feeling that passage of air as it enters through our nostrils. See if you can feel it tickling the back of your throat. Following it down as it goes down into the rib cage and down into the belly through that diaphragm. And then as we exhale, tracing it back up the other way. So that diaphragm, that belly is contracting, the rib cage decreasing, and then the air as it exits out our nostrils. And even be curious to see any temperature differences, perhaps, on your inhale versus your exhale. Noticing all of the sensations with curiosity. So we're not looking to label things as good or bad. What is, is. And just noticing all of those sensations of that breath. Now just let's continue to orientate ourselves to some physical sensory experiences of sitting here breathing, including the sound of your breath. Sounds can be very, very powerful way to anchor ourselves to the present moment. We can't quite hear Amanda's chicken, and I won't do any clucking, don't worry. I'm not that great at having those dulcet tones. But you might hear sounds not only close by, like your own breath, or sounds within the room or space in which you're practicing, but the whole orchestra of sounds from the distance as well. Perhaps it could be bird songs, it might be the rumble of traffic, it might be a radio off in the distance. Just using these sounds to connect to the present moment. Letting them come and go, perhaps focusing on one sound for a few seconds before shifting to another sound. But again, just using that curiosity, that inner child who's just, what's that? Is it high pitch or is it low? High frequency? What's that tone like? And as we have various thoughts or planning or thinking or worrying, again, just labeling them as they come and they go like the waves. Because time and time again, we will get hooked by different thoughts. But just naming them, releasing them, coming back to the physical, to the sounds, to your body that's grounded, to the breath that creates the awareness. And sometimes throughout our days, we have many different emotions. And sometimes those emotions may be stress or anxiety, fear or tension, worry or apprehension. While it can be tough, if we look to suppress these emotions, these feelings, these unhelpful thoughts, we generally find they come back pretty strongly. So seeing if we can cultivate that sense of ease as we turn into some of these difficult emotions. And we can do that by starting by naming them. So, there's sadness, there's fear, there's my story about how much weight I've put on and how fat I am, or that I can't do this and I'm not good enough. Self-imposter syndrome. And does restlessness feel like this, or does anxiety feel like this? It can be also helpful to notice where those unhelpful feelings, thoughts, or emotions are in the body. So generally, sometimes when we feel anxious, we can feel a tightening of the chest. And looking to bring a quality of acceptance, of allowing, of softening of that emotion. So it can be as simple as saying an internal yes. Yes, this is what's happening for me right now. Knowing that, like everything else, this is impermanent and will change. It will pass away. And if you are practicing this and the stress or the emotion is getting too strong, just turn to something neutral. Something neutral like a table or a chair. And if necessary, even opening the eyes with a soft gaze and looking down if they've been closed. Because the eyes can be a helpful way to help us deal with these emotions just by softening that gaze. Not only are the eyes helpful, but also tuning into that breath and lengthening our exhale in times that we might be stressed, but also in times when we do bring attention and awareness to that breath. So times when nothing in particular is calling our attention. And so with awareness, feeling that steady rhythm of our breath as we're sitting here or lying here, getting hooked over and over again by different thoughts. Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're not helpful. And in the final part of this meditation, seeing if we can call forth a kindness, a compassionate quality. A compassionate quality that accompanies our attention, your attention, to meeting yourself wherever you're at this moment in time, whether it be if your body is feeling a little bit anxious or on the go, or it's planning or worrying. Meeting it with kindness, with a bit of friendliness, and without judgment. So that's that curiosity part of the equation. It's in the same way that we might meet a friend who's in distress, offering that same care, that kindness in our attitude to that struggle. So can you bring that same warmth and kindness to yourself right now? Because as we all know, we're probably generally our own harshest critic. And we definitely deserve, if not more, at least the same amount of kindness we would give anyone else. And sometimes as we're sending ourselves a little bit of kindness, it can be really beautiful to place a hand over your heart just to feel that. Because we know that kindness it takes a lot of courage, especially towards ourselves. And courage comes from the Latin word cor, which means heart. So tapping into that heart space, if you would like, if it doesn't feel comfortable for you, that's totally okay as well. We're just basking a little bit in that kindness, maybe feeling it spread. Personally, I think of it like a little bit of a yellow glow coming from my heart, spreading out towards the rest of my body. You can imagine it as a color or a picture perhaps, or just a feeling. We're all different. Now just placing our hands perhaps just back into our laps or by our sides. And as we bring this practice to a close, knowing that you can use these skills of releasing thoughts, releasing stress or anxiety, and using the body and the breath as an anchor and as a way to ground yourself into the present moment. Now just gently bringing some movement back into your bodies. So you do you. It might be, if you have been lying down, I would encourage you to roll to the side before you sit up again and pausing there. If you've been seated, it can be just having a bit of a stretch, a bit of a roll, a bit of a wiggle, feeling those feet, tapping them, tapping the toes, tapping the feet on the ground. Whenever you feel ready, just gently opening your eyes, bringing yourself back into the space in which you've been practicing. And just taking a moment or two, perhaps, before you turn your cameras back on, just to take a moment to reflect. Again, have there been changes? Have there not been changes? Did you find anything helpful, unhelpful? And then whenever you feel ready, and if you can, feeling free to turn your cameras back on. I wonder if I've set anyone else to sleep. It's always a good thing as well. Welcome back, everyone. So what we did then was probably a bit more of a holistic mindfulness practice, in that we tapped into not only quite a few of our senses, but we also tapped into a bit of breath work. And then also there may have been parts which were sticky or uncomfortable when we were looking at our anxious feelings or any stress that we had. But then also finishing off with a little bit of kindness, which I think personally, I think hopefully will, it's helpful for me because I know I'm my own harshest critic, that's for sure. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share? Any thoughts or reflections for them during that exercise or that mindfulness practice?
Hannah, it's Amanda. Just a quick question.
Yeah.
How often, like that was brilliant, but I just, as I said earlier, really busy. How often do you think you should be doing this? Like I'm feeling brilliant right now and I wish I could feel like this all the time, but I can't find an hour once a week, let alone. So if I had to really prescribe time for it, how long would you say?
I think, Amanda, a great place to start is for 3 minutes a day.
Okay.
If you can start and pause for 3 minutes a day, whenever it might be, I would encourage you to kind of tag it onto an already existing routine. So whether it be when the alarm goes off or when you're lying in bed, or it could be, after you've had your breakfast, whatever suits you really. But just starting with 3 minutes. And once we've got that as a consistent, regular habit, then building upon that. But that's where that's pretty much where I did start, and where we do encourage most people to start. Does that help? Beautiful. I think with anything in life, if we chunk it down and it's like, okay, well, I think 3 minutes is pretty manageable. And we can start seeing benefits after 3 minutes as well. Mindfulness in May, which is run by Dr. Elise Bailey, she has proven that just doing 10 minutes a day for the month of May has some pretty strong benefits. But I reckon start with 3 and then build up from there. Cool. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other reflections or questions? Anything else that you wanted to cover off, or any other myth busters that we could get ourselves into? I need my own
Hey Hannah, it's the other.
Yeah, Amanda.
The other Amanda, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I was just thinking how nice it is, how easy it is to get in that moment when somebody's talking. Like when you're talking, I find it much easier to have almost your voice to concentrate on. Enables me to really sit in that moment easier than if it was silent. So I really, as I was saying, I really love having your voice in the background because I'm sort of tuning in and out to listening to you, but I think it's easier for me to feel in the moment when there's you talking rather than just silence.
Yes, it definitely, I would encourage people to start with somebody like a guide, whether that be through our sessions like we've done with a meditation teacher. There's heaps of apps out there as well. But there's also, ladies, there's a wonderful Facebook page called Women United. And so one of my long-term mentors, Carol Fox, she runs regular meditations, I think on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning. So tapping into some beautiful guides, and starting with that, you do get to a place where you build up your repertoire. Like it's just like nutrition, in terms of it's like, oh, I feel like porridge for breakfast, or I'm going to have some poached eggs on toast with smashed avocado if you're in Melbourne, for breakfast. So, and you start listening to your body and it's like, okay, well, I need a guided meditation today because my mind is jumping all over the place. Or you know, if you're up in bright and you have a little bit more stillness, it's like, oh no, I'm just going to set my timer on my phone for a 10-minute practice, and have a little bit of silence as well. So it's just listening to what your body is telling you need in this moment. And we all know that that beautiful saying by the Dalai Lama that, you know, if he's got a crazy day ahead of him, he's feeling a bit stressed, he'll meditate for 2 hours instead of 1. So just the importance of making sure that we do stop, whether it be for 60 seconds, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, etc. Just as important as having our breakfast, getting enough sleep, all of the things. So yeah. Anybody else have any questions or reflections? Yeah, Kelly?
I had a quick question. Those names you mentioned before, Mark Coleman, I caught, but what was the other name? John
Kabat-Zinn. So Jon, and then I think it's like a K and a, so Kabit, and then Zinn, Zinn, I think, roughly. Google will be able to correct you. He's essentially
close enough. Yeah.
The man who brought mindfulness to the West. He's a bit of a legend. And yes, then Women United was the Facebook page if anybody wanted to join up as well. So beautiful. Well, everyone, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us tonight as part of our AWE Network Mindfulness series for 2020. It's definitely been, you know, a year that we won't forget. And I hope that maybe this session or the other sessions have brought a little bit of not only presence, but also a little bit of calm and a little bit of de-stress into your lives. It's been an absolute honor, privilege, and pleasure to be able to lead you through these sessions. And I wish you all a very safe, a very mindful and present festive season, because, you know, Christmas isn't only about presents, it's about presence as well. Pa-ching! So thank you, everyone. And I'll just hand back over to Amanda if she has any AWE stuff that she would like to pass on to us all. Thanks, guys.
Oh, thank you, Hannah, Dr. Mac. And on behalf of the Australasian Women in Emergencies Network and the committee, and certainly personally, I've attended all of your sessions. I have really thoroughly enjoyed them, and we've been so lucky to have had you guide us through these when you're so busy training and getting ready for the Olympics as well. And I just want to wish you all the best with your training up on those mountain roads, and good luck with your selection. I know you're going to make it, and you've got just like 1,300 huge fans right behind you, wishing you luck all the way. So thanks for taking the time with us, and we'll be following you closely, and maybe we can continue in 2021 and you'll come back. So on behalf of everyone, thank you so much. So valued, so appreciated. Love it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. Have a wonderful evening, ladies. Take care. We'll see you later.
Bye, everyone.